is Terri Jones, Terri Jones, Jones. And my story begins in 1992. I noticed that I needed to go see my gynecologist. I just moved back to San Antonio, which is my hometown. And between the time that I made the appointment and the time that I had the appointment, my right breast grew substantially. It didn't really bother me because for the first time in my life I had cleavage. It was a little lopsided, but it was cleavage. By the time I saw the GYN, her response to me was, and I said, that is not a good response. So she sent me downstairs 3 floors to the offices of Catherine Safford, who is a very well-known breast cancer surgeon. And at least she didn't gas, but she got on the phone to the hospital, and within a matter of a day, I was scheduled for a surgical biopsy. And the results came back. I had stage 3 inflammatory, triple negative breast cancer, and not a lot of hope. So I made an appointment with an oncologist, saw him. He said, I think you're going to need a bone marrow transplant. I said, ew, I don't want a bone marrow transplant. He said, do you want to live? I said, okay, transplant. So, and it didn't hurt that the transplant doctor was extremely good looking. So I had the bone marrow transplant in November of 1993. That followed 6 courses of high-dose chemotherapy, 31 courses of radiation therapy, and then the bone marrow transplant. And at the time that they were doing all of these things to me, they keep saying, 3 years, that's your outside. And you're going to be real lucky for 3 years. Well, it's now 28 years. And so I'm still pretty damn lucky, I think. But it got me to thinking, all of these bills that were coming through and all of the insurance payments that were being made, what happens to women who don't have the resources that I happen to have? And so I asked the director of the Institute for Drug Development, and he said, well, that's easy, they die. And I said, that is not okay. We need to do something. So I hooked up with Kathy Safford, and together we formed Wings, which my husband very graciously named because I was stuck after the what. And so we got our charter in October of 1999. We saw our first patient in January of 2000. A lovely woman from Del Rio. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer 3 years before, but she couldn't find anybody who would treat her because she had no money and she had no insurance. And so that's where we step in. And that's where Wings has been stepping since that day in January of 2000. And she is doing fine. Our patient is doing fine. She is now a great-grandmother and she and her family attend just about every event that Wings has. They are so grateful and want to be part of it so much that it makes you really feel good. Our second patient was a darling woman named Anna, And Anna had two small children, 2 and 4. And she was stage 4 breast cancer, not a lot of hope, a long time between diagnosis and treatment. And I remember her saying at one point, "I can't die. Who will take care of my babies?" And so that became another rallying cry for Wings. Who will take care of these people's babies? Who will take care of these people? Who will hold those families intact if somebody's not there to do it? And so that's what we did. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. We contracted with every medical professional in town who practices oncology or radiation therapy or surgery. They have agreed to ridiculously low rates for Wings patients. And that makes it possible to treat more people than just 1 or 2 at a time. Because the way Wings works best is when you've got 100 people in there at all levels of treatment, so that you have some people who are just being diagnosed, some people who are coming out of the program fully intact, and they're going into another program that follows them up for the rest of their lives, just to make sure nothing happens to them. And that is essentially the story of Wings. It's simple, it's easy, it just takes courage, and it takes hope, and it takes the notion that you can do it, both as a patient and as a provider. You can make it happen. Well, I would say, I have an audience. I would say that obviously the biggest ticket moment was Wings' selection as the Use Your Wings winner for the Oprah Network. And they flew us to Chicago and put us on the air, and that resulted in literally hundreds of inquiries from all over the United States. How can you help me? How can you get me into the program? How can I start a program? And we did as much as we could, and that resulted in several hundred people that year being admitted into Wings from all over Central and South Texas. At the time, we served Bexar County, and now we serve 54 Texas counties, as well as out-of-state physicians who are willing to play with us as well. So that is sort of my biggest highlight reel. But there's a lot of little tiny highlight reels, things that you don't expect, things that people come up to you and say, "You probably don't remember me, but I want to thank you for saving my mother's life." Pretty cool. And then to meet the mother and to hear her say something, and to have a daughter say, 6 months ago we were planning my mother's funeral, and now we're planning her future. That wouldn't be possible without Wings. So we are really blessed to be in a position where we can make this happen. And we are especially blessed by people like Sandra and Ruth, who have followed in our footsteps and come behind us and are continuing to make sure that the promise of life and hope isn't left behind on a doorstep someplace. That we make it real, we make it special, and we make it individual. we do. One of the things that makes Wings work and makes it special is the enormous amount of volunteers who come to us and they want to make a difference. They don't really know how yet, but they'll figure it out. And we want them to make a difference. So we have volunteers who help promote golf tournaments or riverwalk parties or whatever is happening. They want to be there. And it is that group of people that creates the momentum for the good works that Wings does. Without that effort, we would just be floundering. But everybody should know that we have a great big tent, and anybody who wants to come in is welcome. And we'll find a place for them. We'll go to their strengths. We'll go to where they are. They don't need to modify their behavior for us. We'll find a place for them. Just get to that tent and see what magic you can bring, because every day it is magic. And you can go to www.texaswings.org. Give her wings. Everybody deserves a lifetime.